State of South Carolina and received his BS from the University of South Carolina. Welcome, Mr. Lewis, to the committee. Mr. James L. Taylor was confirmed by the United States Senate as the Chief Financial Officer for the Department of Labor on June 22, 2010. Prior to this position, he served as Deputy Inspector General for the Department of Homeland Security, where he assisted the Inspector General in managing over 600 auditors, inspectors, and investigators. He received his BA from Old Dominion University and an MPA from the University of Delaware. Welcome, Mr. Taylor. We're happy to have you with us. I think you're both veterans of Capitol Hill hearings and know that our practice is that your written statements without objection will be accepted as part of the written record. We'd ask you to offer us a 5-minute summary of your written testimony, beginning with Mr. Lewis. At the conclusion of those summaries, we'll go to questions from the members of the subcommittee. I'm sure you know the light system, that green means go, yellow means speed up, unlike when you're driving a car, and red means come to a screeching halt. Now, we certainly would want you to finish your comments. Mr. Lewis, we begin with you. Welcome to the subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the audit of the U.S. Department of Labor's FY2010 Consolidated Financial Statements. The independent public accounting firm KPMG conducted the audit under a contract with the Office of Inspector General. My name is Elliott Lewis, and I am the Assistant Inspector General for Audit at the Department of Labor. As you know, the OIG is an independent agency within the Department, and the views expressed in my testimony are based on the independent findings and recommendations of the audit work and are not intended to reflect the Department's position. The CFO Act requires the OIG to audit and report on the Department's consolidated financial statements. OMB requires the audit be completed by November 15th each year. To enable the auditors to meet this deadline, the Department must provide significant financial information and supporting documentation throughout the year. Therefore, an inability on the part of the Department to produce the necessary information in a timely manner affects the successful completion of the audit and results in a less than favorable opinion for the Department. As I will detail in my testimony, Mr. Chairman, for the most part, it was the Department's inability to provide timely and accurate financial data that resulted in the Department receiving a disclaimer of opinion on its 2010 consolidated financial statements. The Department was unable to provide this data due to a host of system migration, integration, and configuration problems that occurred when it implemented a new financial system. It is important to note that prior to this, the Department had received an unqualified opinion on its annual financial statement since 1997. In the mid-2000s, the Department decided that its financial system, dollars, was outdated and no longer able to efficiently and effectively meet the Department's financial management requirements. In July 2008, the Department contracted to obtain a new system, which it named the Nucor Financial System, or Nucor. The Department planned a 15-month implementation period that would conclude at the end of FY 2009. Upon implementation in January 2010, the Department encountered many unforeseen complications that in some cases it is still working to address today. It is important to highlight the Department experienced much turnover in key leadership positions in the Office of the Chief Financial Officer during the time it was planning, developing, and implementing Nucor. This included the retirement of its two top senior executives shortly after Nucor was implemented. The OIG contracted with KPMG to conduct a pre-implementation audit of Nucor prior to its original scheduled deployment in October 2009. During this audit, we issued 2 alert memoranda to inform the Department of issues requiring immediate attention, training of staff prior to implementation of the new system, and timely completion of transaction workbooks to be used to record financial activity occurring after dollars was shut down but before Nucor became available. The audit identified 11 implementation risks to future integrity and availability of the Department's financial data and recommended the Department take these risks into consideration when making its decision to implement Nucor. The Department disagreed with many of our reported results and went forward with the implementation. Following implementation, our attention turned to preparing for the consolidated financial statement audit. We issued several more alert memoranda regarding our concerns that problems resulting from the transition to Nucor were preventing the Department from providing KPMG with the necessary information to complete the audit. While the Department worked to meet its goal of producing auditable financial statements, it continued to experience difficulties and ultimately was unable to do so, resulting in the disclaimer of opinion. As stated in the audit report, the department's ability to assure the accuracy and completeness of its financial statement balances and to provide data necessary for audit testing was hindered by data migration, integration, reconciliation, and configuration issues. The audit report contained 24 specific recommendations related to findings that contributed to the disclaimer of opinion. The department generally concurred with the recommendations and noted that many of them corresponded with corrective actions planned or already taken. Going forward, the most important financial management issue facing the department is the need to correct the new core implementation issues in order to either reissue corrected financial statements or provide accurate and complete information for the auditors to audit the opening balances for 2011. The department indicated that it plans to reissue its 2010 consolidated financial statements in early 2011. The OIG will continue to monitor the department's actions. There is much to be done, but the challenges are not insurmountable if appropriate resources are timely dedicated to the necessary corrective actions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present the results of the audit. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you or other members of the subcommittee may have.
Mr. Lewis, thank you for your service and for your testimony. Mr. Taylor, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the subcommittee. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you to discuss the financial management at the Department of Labor, and specifically I do understand that the purpose of this hearing is to understand why the financial statement audit opinion for the Department of Labor fell from an unqualified opinion or clean opinion to a disclaimer. An unqualified opinion means that the independent auditors have determined that the financial statements fairly represent the position and activities of the department. The disclaimer of opinion the Department of Labor received for 2010 means simply that the independent auditors could not complete the detailed effort required to opine on these statements. It does not necessarily mean that they found any statements materially in error. In the case of the Department of Labor, this inability to complete the audit resulted from our transition to the new core financial management system and the issues which arose. Irrespective of the cause, the department's leadership is disappointed in this result. The fact that other agencies have experienced similar problems when replacing systems and also lost their clean audit opinion does not make this experience less disappointing. We have already taken steps to overcome these problems, and we're working every day to bring the department's financial systems into compliance with the highest financial standards. It is because of this progress that I do intend to resubmit our financial statements to the Office of Inspector General within the next few months and request that they fully audit our 2010 financial activities and possibly reissue their opinion. To better put the financial systems effort in context, the department spent $35 million between 2003 and 2008 in an effort to replace an old legacy system which had been in use for over 2 decades. When this previous effort failed, the department awarded a contract for the development and implementation of the new core financial management system in July of 2008. The department was able to eliminate much of its risk by contracting for a product that was already in use within the federal government. And since the department decided to use a shared service provider, we do not own any hardware or software associated with the implementation or the product. This eliminates the need for costly infrastructure, maintenance, and in-house technical resources. It also integrates a number of internal feeder systems, including procurement, travel, grants management, and payroll, which produce real-time, cross-platform financial data and reduces the transaction processing errors that result when those systems are reconciled manually to the former system. Nucor took 18 months to implement at an initial cost of less than $15 million and an annual operational cost of approximately $20 million in program years 2010 and $11 million in 2011. The initial go-live date was October 1st, but as has been mentioned, the launch was delayed until January 14th, 2010 to provide additional time to train users and continue data migration activities. The department had failures during the Nucor implementation. First, Nucor user requirements were significantly underestimated during the contract development. The initial contract envisioned less than a quarter of the users who are now actually interfacing with the system. Having significantly underestimated the user base, the original contract did not account for the additional need for user training, system support from the contractor, and general system loading, resulting from the more than double the number of day-to-day users. Second, the new system also brought substantial business process changes that were not fully anticipated when the contractor was selected. We have dramatically changed how we process things like invoicing and travel payments, and it's a more automated process. But that really impacted a cultural change in how the department does business, and that was a lot for a department which has been doing the same way of business for 20 years to swallow. Third, we have a significant challenge with data migration from the old system to the new. This involved the transfer of detailed data, some of it decades old, from legacy financial and feeder systems to Nucor. For instance, the financial data in the department's legacy financial system was never reconciled with the financial data in the procurement system. Before being migrated to Nucor, this was a task that had to be accomplished so that both systems could use the same financial information. These migration issues also have impacted our ability to provide timely and accurate financial reporting. Finally, the department experienced significant turnover amongst its senior financial managers, as my colleague has already mentioned. The department elected a Senate-confirmed Chief Financial Officer from January 2009 until I was confirmed in late June of this year. The department career Deputy CFO and the Associate Deputy CFO overseeing the implementation both retired shortly after the system launched in January 2010, leaving the department without any permanent financial management leadership. In spite of all these issues I've discussed, it's important to note that none of these problems impacted the mission of the department. During 2010, we made a conscious decision that the first priority would be in supporting the activities of the department's agencies. We succeeded in that objective. The necessary financial activities to provide unemployment benefits, job training grants, support costs for workplace and mine safety inspections continued without interruption. In closing, Mr. Chairman, the challenges which have occurred with the implementation of the department's new system are unfortunate, and I take responsibility for making sure they are overcome in a timely manner. While I was confirmed by the Senate in late June, I was detailed for my position as Deputy IG at the Department of Homeland Security to serve as an advisor to the Deputy Secretary of Labor from late October 2009 until February of 2010. And this was in order to assist the department in identifying issues and trying to mitigate the problems prior to go live. So I'm very familiar with the issues the department faces. In addition to auditing DHS's financial activities immediately prior to coming to this position, I was previously charged with implementing financial systems as Deputy CFO at FEMA and the Department of Commerce. While the process at DOL has certainly not been a seamless one, I have seen difficult implementations at other agencies, and I have no doubt that the challenges we have encountered at DOL can and will be overcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen, both very much. I appreciate it. We'll begin with questions. Mr. Taylor, I think I heard you say that sometime in the next few months, the department should be ready to present to the auditing firm consolidated financial statements that are auditable. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Do we know about when that will be?
Our goal is to have it by the end of January, I'm sorry.
January of 2011.
Yes, sir.
And then, although I know you can't assure the future, is it your opinion that when fiscal year 11 closes on September 30th, 11, that the statements, the consolidated financial statements, will be auditable at that point for 2011?
I'm very comfortable that they will be.
Okay. And Mr. Lewis, I assume it's then your agency's decision as to whether to issue a supplemental report or not based upon those new consolidated financial statements?
Correct.
You should put your microphone on.
That's correct, but we have been working very closely with the CFO's office, with the department on that note, and that's exactly what we plan to do if the department wants to reissue and get a new opinion. We will certainly
speaking only for myself, not for the other members of the committee, I think it would be a very desirable result so that we have your imprimatur on that. Let me ask one other question, Mr. Lewis, and I know that because you're dealing with unaudited or with really unauditable statements at this point, you really can't give a definitive answer. But in the review of the unauditable statements that your contractor looked at for fiscal 10, was there any evidence whatsoever of fraud or theft?
No.
Was there any evidence of any nefarious misconduct that you saw?
No.
So am I correct in characterizing this as an absence of sufficient information to make a qualified audited judgment?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Mr. Taylor, let me ask you a question which is a bit broader, which I think concerns a lot of members of the committee. And I do understand that you did not get confirmed until June 22nd of 2010, which is nearly 6 months after, or I guess more than 6 months after the system went live, around 6 months. So I'm not in any way accusing you when I ask these questions, but a taxpayer would certainly wonder the following. In July of 2008, long before Secretary Solis took office, by the way, in July of 2008, the department makes a decision to implement a new financial management accounting system. That system is not yet in a position to produce auditable financial statements by November 15th of 2010. Why? What happened?
No, that's a very legitimate question. The actual implementation took 18 months, and 18 months in the federal sphere is actually a very short period of time, and OMB is pushing other departments.
We may want that sphere to change.
I totally agree. And other systems that I've been involved in took years to accomplish the same end. The planning for the implementation and the actual cutover of 18 months is actually a very reasonable time frame in my history of doing this.
I will confess to you that my governmental experience is much smaller levels of government, a county government, and my private sector experience is really limited to being an observer, obviously, but I don't know many publicly traded companies who can get away with that explanation to their shareholders, that we took 18 months to implement. Matter of fact, I think the Securities and Exchange Commission would never accept that explanation. Again, I'm not in targeting these questions at you, holding you accountable because you didn't arrive until June of 2010, but what do you think we could do to implement a system the next time we do such a thing more expeditiously? I mean, why does it take 18 months at a minimum? And my understanding is there's no allegation that any software malfunction. Is that right? All the software involved in this worked.
That's correct.
It's more a matter of training people how to use it and how to do the data entry and what practices they should follow. Is that right?
A lot of the time is used up in making sure that you undergo the proper training and that the interfaces are set up appropriately.
Are all of the users of the system employees or contractors of the Department of Labor, or do non-employees and contractors also use it?
Employees of the Department of Labor or
So really everybody who uses this is being compensated somehow by the department.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I just, and again, I understand this goes back to prior to Secretary Solis, and I'm not asking this question any kind of partisan method at all, but I must say that taxpayers would wonder why it takes so long to implement such a thing, and I think it's a lesson we could all learn to avoid such a thing. When this amount of money is being handled, you know, the possibility that we don't know where it is and what's being spent for because the system is not auditable is not a very, very good result. Now, on the other side of the coin, it looks to me like you've made a lot of progress since June. And I'm encouraged to hear Mr. Lewis says he'll be receiving these reports. And I hope that the sequel to this riveting hearing is that a letter has been issued by the auditor which gives a clean audit to the department. We certainly hope that will be the case. I thank you, and I would ask Mr. Rowe for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just briefly, a couple of questions. The way I understand this is that the IG is an independent agency within the Department of Labor, correct?
Correct.
And I've also, in reading your testimony, was that you didn't feel like you needed, and I agree with you, the resources to carry on this audit, and that's why the outside firm was, which I think also is a good idea. They have the resources. That's why I think it would be very important for them to be here, because you just made a statement a minute ago that I'd have to disagree with a little bit, which is you stated that, and you may be absolutely right in doing this, but I'd be reluctant, I think, to say it, that you didn't see any fraud, abuse, or anything. If you don't have all the information available to you, it would be hard, I think, to make that statement when the material weaknesses, and that's whatever a serious problem is, and I guess that's, are you a little bit overweight? I'm not sure what a serious problem is, a definition of that, but a material weakness would be a lack of sufficient controls over financial reporting. So you really couldn't make that statement if you didn't have those controls, could you?
Well, let me make that more distinct, that in what we could look at, because you're right, we were limited, we didn't see, which that's different to me than saying there is not any there. If I was asked, is there any fraud or malfeasance there, I couldn't answer that question. Probably even if we had completed the entire audit, I wouldn't be able to answer that. To the extent that what we were able to look at we didn't see that in what we were able to look at. But you're correct, there was a lot that we could not look at.
Well, it appears to me that we went from an older system, the so-called legacy system that you have. How much were we, and we had 12, I mean, since 1997, all the audits were fine. And then we switched to this new system, and all of a sudden there were all kinds of findings that didn't allow you to have a clean audit. So I agree that something happened, and I think we need to know what that something is, whether it's, as the chairman said, whether it's the personnel that are there, and so on, to clean this up, because I'm not implying there's any intent. I'm just saying there's no way you could say there's not, that something didn't happen when you don't have the information there. And Mr. Taylor, I appreciate you haven't been on board very long, so just a few months. How much did the DOL spend initially on the 2010 audit, and how much will be spent cleaning up this? Do you know?
The normal cost for a year is around $4 million. We've spent maybe $400,000 over that at this point because of the additional work that had to be done as a result of this. We are right now, as we sit here, negotiating with the firm in terms of what would be the additional cost to finish and what would be the additional cost if we actually reissue the statements and reissue the opinion in the middle of the year, which we wouldn't have to do. But
And those costs were about the same for either system, the new automated system or the legacy system you were using?
Yes.
So the costs for auditing were about the same?
Yeah, the audit cost was comparable this year to previous years had we not run into
this issue,
the problems we did, yes.
And Mr. Taylor, when do you see this being, I know the chairman asked these questions, but when do you see this being brought to fruition, when we no longer will have this problem?
Well, in terms of the problem themselves, many of them have already been resolved. The auditors simply have not had a chance to come in and re-audit the activity. So we're convinced that the operational issues that were identified in the audit report, they've been resolved. Day-to-day activities in the department have better internal controls and are processing very smoothly. In terms of getting the auditors to come in and look at our work and be able to look at the financial reports that we didn't give them the opportunity to do before, by the end of January.
The other question is, anything is over now, but I would have thought when you switch to a new system, you might want to parallel it for the first year to make sure that they balanced up. I would have thought when you switch to an entirely new system, you'd run your old one along there at the same time. Any thought of doing that?
Yeah, that comes up a lot. And in some IT systems, that makes sense. But I've done this about 3 or 4 times now. I've never been involved in an activity where we ran parallel financial systems, because the financial systems are the systems of record. And in order to keep 2 systems operating at the same time for an extended period of time and keep them in sync is a very resource-intensive effort, and it's really difficult to do successfully. In fact, part of the problems we have this year was the fact that because we delayed doing the implementation until January, that meant the first quarter was all in the old system. We did run parallel for the first quarter and trying to complete better training and do some other things to mitigate the problems going forward. And that posed a lot of problems for us that resulted in what you saw here with the disclaimer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Tennessee. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Kildee, for his questions for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Lewis, why was the decision made to replace the old accounting system in the year in question? And was this an appropriate time to undertake such a complex task? And maybe also, why had it not been replaced earlier?
Well, there had been other efforts to replace the system earlier that did not succeed for various reasons, lack of funding. But I think it was replaced because it was a very old system. Although it was functioning, I think it took more work to meet the demands of what's expected from an agency or any entity today in terms of having real-time financial information that the old system wasn't capable of providing. Although it could, eventually comply with what needed to be done, it didn't really have the real-time capability to provide information. So I think that was an appropriate reason for replacing a system that had been around since the mid-'80s.
Mr. Taylor, you've been in government and you've been auditing in various agencies. Are there similar problems that you worry about in maybe some other agencies of government similar to the problems that we've found here in the Department of Labor?
Well, without having direct knowledge of other departments, I can tell you that what I've seen in my career is that whenever you try to replace a legacy system, you run into similar problems. I've seen them before, experienced them before. And in my prior job as Deputy IG, we were working with the Department of Homeland Security so that they could actually produce an integrated system. They're working on that at the same time, much grander scale than Department of Labor, but they have the same issues.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentleman. The chair is happy to recognize the gentlelady from Ohio, Ms. Fudge, for her questions for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you both. I certainly do thank both the chair and the ranking member for asking questions that everyday citizens would ask. I think it's very important. I happen to have served actually in every level of government, from local, county, state, and now federal. And with the exception of the federal, I have dealt with these kinds of issues on a number of occasions. And I would say that 18 months really is very good, quite frankly, especially when you're dealing with an agency as large as the Department of Labor and people who have been used to a system for very long. All of us know that most of us are resistant to change. And it is a very difficult process. Clearly, I would hope that as you look at the findings, that we would in fact have a clean or unqualified audit in the near future. And I too am concerned about the fact that our auditor, KPMG, as large a company as it is, could not find one person to be here today. Certainly timing with us is an issue. It's an issue for us sitting here. But to have a company that size that has received these kinds of resources from the government, I would have to believe that some one person could have shown up today. Just in terms of a time frame, and the ranking member mentioned this to you as well, do you believe that you are 80% there, 60% there? If you could please, Mr. Taylor or Mr. Lewis.
Well, in terms of performing financial reporting on a day-to-day basis, we're there. We can do the financial reporting right now with the new system. In terms of providing the extracts, data extracts, and the information that the auditors need to complete their work and the samples, I think we're just about there as well. And I think that by the end of January, we'll definitely be there.
So then you no longer have the problem of trying to transfer data from one system to another. You have complete information. All that you need to have right now to get this thing 100% operational and to be put in a position to either file a new report and or get a clean audit, you are saying are there.
If I could make a clear distinction, in terms of being operational, we are 100% operational. We're supporting the day-to-day activities of the department as we speak. There's no grant, no contract, no personnel action that cannot be accomplished in the current system. In terms of providing all the information to the auditors that they require, I think we're pretty much there now. But I think that by the January timeframe, I think that we'll have it all. And there'll always be issues that arise in any operation. But the idea when you're on the audit side, you look at materiality. And the question is, materially, do you have any issues? And right now, materially, I don't think I do have any issues.
And my last question is, so you are the person that would be held responsible if, in fact, by the end of January, this thing doesn't come out the way it should?
If I cannot provide the information to the auditors by the end of January, yes, I'm the one who's accountable for that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. I would ask the ranking member if he has any concluding comments.
Just very briefly, again, I agree with Congresswoman Fudge that it would have been a lot better, I think, had the auditors been here, but you all have been very forthright and forthcoming. I think we'll know by the end of January. When will we be able to, in this subcommittee, be able to have that information when the auditors have looked? Because I would like to know that this has been cleared up, that there are no findings. When can we expect to find that?
Well, of course, I will be dependent on exactly what the department provides us and when they provide it, but probably within a couple of months after they've given us the final clean information and that there are no problems with it, that's probably the earliest we would see something.
April timeframe, I would guess, assuming that we meet our schedule, which is our intent.
The subcommittee should be able to have findings of a clean audit, or when the auditors have looked and with all the data that's there, issue a report on whether it's clean or not.
Right.
By April.
Correct.
Okay, well, I appreciate you being here, and thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
I thank my friend, I thank my colleagues, and especially thank the witnesses. It occurs to me the committee then has 3 agenda items going forth from today. Number 1 is we would encourage Mr. Taylor, you and the department to, as you are, expeditiously meet the deadline of providing the consolidated statements to the IG. Number 2, when the IG and its contractor have completed their thorough review of those statements, we'd be eager to receive your conclusions with April or whenever that is. And then number 3, I think all members of the committee are interested in the more generic problem of how we can avoid this kind of delay in the future so that we never again have a situation, if we can avoid it, where the Labor Department or any other department is in a position where there is an inability to provide auditable and complete data by the deadline. And we appreciate, Mr. Taylor, your efforts in solving this problem. Mr. Lewis, we appreciate you and your organization being very vigilant for the taxpayers and for those who depend upon the department. And without objection, members will have 14 days to submit additional materials or questions for the hearing record. And without objection, the hearing is adjourned.